Going on, y'all? Sean of Mascot Tutoring here. Hopefully, you're doing well. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and show my shirt to you. One of my new Mascot Tutoring shirts. Hold on a second. Let me see. Okay, there we go. It should be visible now. What kind of tree is shaped like a triangle? A trigonometry. Had to put the dad joke in there. But anyway, um, yeah, let's go ahead and I digress. So anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. Today on this live, I want to talk a bit about SAT math and specifically succeeding at SAT math. Because let's face it, when it comes to the SAT, which you should be thinking about, especially once you get to about 10th grade, definitely 11th and 12th grade. When it comes to SAT math, that's usually the thing that people really struggle with. Okay. And as one, who was a high schooler, as one who now helps people with SAT math, I know, I know, and so I can now, I can now do that kind of math for fun and help other students to kind of know what to look for and to have that confidence that you need whenever you go into the SAT. Because let's face it, the SAT is not like a any old standardized test. And I'm going to explain that in this presentation here, or let's call it a webinar, a workshop. I'm going to explain that. And that's the thing. When I first took the SAT, I actually went into it thinking of it as like a standardized test, like the ones you take that are like end of the year. And it's just not that kind of test. So you need to go in there with the right kind of expectations. So, anyhow, without further ado, let's talk about SAT math mastery. Okay. So let's see here. Um, Here we go. All right. Oops, that's not the view that I wanted. Okay. So I thought it would have shared that correctly. Okay, hold on a second. Um, is it this one? Here it is. All right. SAT Math Mastery. Now, there will be an opportunity for questions. So if you have any questions, definitely go ahead and put those in the chat. I may answer some questions sooner rather than later, but there'll definitely be time at the end. All right, just to talk a little bit about myself. So I graduated from Jones County High School in Gray, Georgia. I was an honor graduate in the class of 2003. I got my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Mercer University, and then a little later, I got my master's in electrical engineering from the same university. Go Bears! And I had a 14 plus year career in electronics engineering in the Air Force. So, needless to say, math has been a really big part of everything I've done from high school onward. Now I own a math tutoring organization. When it comes to the PSAT and the SAT, I took the PSAT two times. I mean, yeah, two times, once in the 10th grade and then in the 11th grade when it's official. And then I took the SAT a total of three times. It was my taking of the PSAT in 2001 when I was a 10th grader that really threw me for a loop because it said that my score, SAT score, would have been a 960. And I was shocked. I was like, what? Because I've always almost always been a great student, made all A's or close to it, did great on tests, standardized tests, whatever. And so I just expected it to be like a run of the mill test. Then I saw 960. I was like, okay, what in the world is this? So then from that point on, like when I took the PSAT again, when I took the SAT, the times I took it, I was always actually preparing for the SAT. And so fast forward to once I finished taking the SAT three times, my highest math score was a 640. So way better than I did whenever I first took the SAT. All right. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about what the SAT is for because I'm a firm believer that whenever you kind of understand the purpose of the test, it helps you to kind of understand how to approach it. So the SAT is made by the College Board, and the purpose of it is to determine it's only slightly to determine what you know, but that's what a lot of typical standardized tests are about. This test is more so to help to determine your critical thinking ability. How well do you think critically? how well do you use what you know to solve problems? So there's a difference there. It's not just about what you know, it's like how can you use what you know to solve problems? How deep is your knowledge of the material? Okay. Now, during COVID, during the pandemic, a lot of schools, out of necessity, went to a test optional policy, meaning that the test wasn't necessarily mandatory like it once was. Okay. Now, these are just some kind of like different kind of descriptions of some of the test optional policies that schools took on, whether it was test optional for all, like people who scored um, well GPA and all that kind of stuff. Test optional for some, test flexible, whatever. The thing with this is now that we're in 2025, about to go into 2026, a lot of schools have actually kind of like dropped their test optional policy. Okay. Um, the best thing for you to do along those lines is to research to kind of find out the policy of the school of your choice. Because a lot of schools resumed after the pandemic was more or less, gone. Um, but even if your school of choice um, has a test optional policy, there's still some very important reasons to take the SAT, and I think you'll agree with me. And we'll get into it. Now, the thing about a great SAT score is that it's one of the things that will help you to stand out among thousands of college applicants. It doesn't really matter what school you apply to. Most schools are going to have a lot of people applying, hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of applicants. So whatever will help you to stand out is very important. And one of those things is a great SAT score. An SAT score helps a college to get an idea of how prepared you are to think at a college level. And so that's why schools tend to smile on the SAT. And then a SAT score that's good can actually qualify you for easily hundreds of thousands of dollars in academic scholarships. That's not an exaggeration. It really depends on the kind of the school that you apply to. It can easily qualify you for that. This is why the SAT is important, even if it's optional. Happens to be optional for your particular school. So, for example, now this applies to you if you actually live in Georgia, where I am. There's a scholarship called the Zell Miller Scholarship. Um, the state scholarship. Zell Miller was a governor back in the day. This scholarship will provide up to full tuition for public schools in the state. Okay, that's a lot. And with private schools, like the school I went to was a private school, Mercer University. The Zell Miller Scholarship will provide a portion of tuition for private schools like the one I went to or other colleges, many private colleges. But you had to have a 3.7 GPA minimum and then a minimum 1200 SAT score. Now, it's a lot of people who that SAT score can be a sticking point for them specifically because of the math portion. Okay. This is why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. But if you were unable to get that 1200 minimum, then you automatically disqualify to receive a scholarship like this one. And I can imagine that there are various other states have scholarships, state scholarships like this to attend, help you to pay for most, if not all, of your schooling. So let's talk a little bit about what SAT math actually is. So the college board who makes the SAT, they describe the SAT math portion as problem solving, modeling, using tools strategically, and using algebraic structure. Okay, that's how they described it in one of their SAT books. Okay. Now, specifically, there are four types of math on the SAT that I haven't put on the screen here. You have what you call algebra. Then you have, which is kind of like algebra one, linear equations, linear inequalities, systems of equations, stuff like that. Then you have advanced math, which is kind of like algebra two type stuff. Then you have problem solving and data analysis. That's math that has to do with maybe you get like some a table of data and then you have to do math based on the whatever is on that table of data. Um, and then fourth, you have geometry and trigonometry, which I always tell people don't let the fact that there's trig on the SAT, don't let that bother you because it only goes through like right triangle trigonometry, which you'll most likely talk about in geometry. Okay. Now, if you've completed algebra 2, then you have technically taken all of the math that's on the SAT. You if you've taken up to algebra 2, which is some these days is called, I think, advanced algebra in high school. But if you've done that, then you've taken all the math on the SAT. So you really need to probably just review some things. So there are two 35-minute modules with 44 questions, which are multiple choice and what you call student produced response. Okay. So the student produced response is basically you work the problem and then you may have to actually fill in like the actual answer to it, versus choosing from four choices what the answer would be. Nowadays, calculators allowed for the whole SAT math portion. Okay. Whereas in my day, it only was allowed for part of it. That said, you don't necessarily need a calculator for most of the SAT math. You don't need it for most of it. It's important to know because that means that sometimes if you go in and you're just ready to use your calculator, that might work against you. It might be faster for you to work it without a calculator. So let me not get ahead of myself. And then you also have annotation capability on the SAT, which means that you can leave yourself a note to kind of come back to a section you skipped. Skipping is important for the SAT. Sometimes, and I just say this now. If you're taking the SAT and there's something that you don't understand, a problem that you don't understand, skip it. You don't want to spend a lot of time on that because you are actually on a timer. So you want to skip that and then come back to it. That's how this annotation can actually be, very useful. Each math section is generally arranged from like easier to harder, easier to more challenging. So you want to keep that in mind. So you'll probably zip through the first few. But it's also, again, the reason why I'm telling you all these things is because this can kind of help you to understand that you can have some technique about this and just kind of some understanding when you go into it versus being surprised. Because a lot of times when you're surprised, that will hurt you. And one of the things I really want to elaborate, which I'm going to say again later, is this: it is normal to have extra information inside of SAT math problems. What I mean is, or in math problems, what I mean is these are tests of your critical thinking. So one thing that they do with SAT math problems, very common, is that they will put extra information in the problem that you don't really need, but you have to know your math to the extent that you can discern, okay, this information about this in this math problem is not really anything I need to solve what they're asking me to solve. Very important, because you don't want to go in there and you're supposed to use all the information that's in that SAT math problem, and then you end up solving something that's not what they're actually asking you. So this is very, very important. Okay. So here are the three strategies I want to give you for making a 600 or higher on SAT math. The first one, I'm going to explain these. The first one is refresh your toolbox through strategic review. Second thing is practice and practice a lot. And the third thing is learn to understand the question. So let's get into these. First one, like I said, is you need to refresh your toolbox through strategic math review. Okay. Case in point, do you remember these things I have listed out? Exponent rules, factoring polynomials, completing the square. That's like whenever you are factoring um a polynomial by completing the square. Or you may use completing the square to find, for example, uh you might use it to find the equation for like a circle or something like that. Vertex of a parabola, circles like arc length, chords, etc., linear equations, percents. Do you remember these things? If you've taken through algebra 2, then you've seen these things before. But this is kind of like what I'm trying to illustrate here. Just because you've seen them doesn't mean you remember them. So that's why you have to refresh your knowledge of a lot of these different kinds of things. Pretty much everything I've mentioned here, most everything I've mentioned here will actually show up on the SAT. But do you remember it? If you don't, you need to refresh your memory. The second thing, which probably seems like a no-brainer, but that I do want to emphasize, is that you need to practice and you need to practice a lot. So getting better in math is similar to building muscle. That's the way I like to. That's the way I like to think about it. Because when it comes to building muscle, lifting weights, you have to actually do the work. You can't just think it. You have to do the work. You have to consistently do the work, and you have to experience the struggle. When you're lifting weights and trying to build muscle, it's going to be difficult. You're actually going to experience that strain feeling. That's that resistance going against your muscle. Math is the same way. You got to practice. You have to also struggle with it. You may have a time trying to remember whatever it is, and it's like, man, I don't remember how to do these exponents, whatever. But it's okay if it's like that. That's literally a part of learning. When it comes to practice, you need to be practicing most days of the week. Okay. You need to be practicing at least 3 days a week, if not more than that. Okay. If you're serious about raising your score. This means, yes, if you're a high schooler, then that means, or if your child is a high schooler, that means you're just gonna have to fit it in some kind of way. There's time you have to fit it in. I really feel for young people of this day and age because most of them have like very distracting cell phones and things like that. But you just have to decide, is this what you really want? And you have to separate out the time, even if it's like 15 or so minutes a day. You need to be practicing. You need to sometimes practice with a timer, take practice tests and time yourself. Okay. Why? Because that's going to help to simulate the actual test environment, which is very important. So you can kind of understand and kind of be used to knowing that your time is limited. That's important. Don't cram. If you're taking the SAT in February, now is the time. Really should have started studying earlier than this, but you need to get on it. You don't need to be practicing if the test is on February the 2nd and you just picked up a book like January the 28th, you're really, really behind if you're doing that and you set yourself up for failure. So um don't cram. You want to give yourself at least 2 or 3 months. As you're taking the SAT, you want to be always practicing. And then take the SAT at least 2 times. I told you I took the SAT 3 times. Um, but a lot of people recommend you take the SAT as much as you can, at least until you get a score that you're satisfied with. Okay. Now, third thing is you need to understand the question. Sounds like a no-brainer, but just like I said before, it's normal for people to have extra information in these problems, and you have to be able to use your knowledge in such a way that you can kind of understand when there is extra information. Pay close attention to what I refer to as the question statement. What is the question statement? It literally is the thing with the question mark after it. That's what the question statement is. Okay. Again, I know this still sounds simple, but don't minimize it. Don't minimize it. The question statement is what's going to actually help you to know what information you need in the problem. It's going to help you to know what information is extra in the problem. Excuse me. The question statement will actually help you to know also if you actually finish the problem. And why do I say that? It's because when you are working SAT math problems, some of these are going to require 2, 3, 4 steps. Okay. In other words, you're going to get an answer that's going to lead to another answer that's going to lead you to the answer. Okay. Now, multiple choice means you might solve part of the problem and you see the answer, whatever you just got an answer to, in the answer choices. But that's not really what you were looking for. That you're looking for something that's further past that, right? So that's why I'm saying you need to really be always, always kind of like keeping in front of you, what are they asking me? Okay. Knowing the question statement will help you to filter out additional clues which may be implied. Okay. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, whenever you understand the question, there may be some things that they didn't mention in the question that you understand have to be a part of solving the problem just because you understand when you solve this kind of math, it requires this kind of technique. Okay. If that actually makes sense. I'm trying to give a good example of this. So I don't know, like um if you were to solve a problem and it was asking something like Sally was driving somewhere and she was driving um 50 miles a minute, I mean 50 miles an hour, and then like how many seconds did it take or something like that. You had to understand in that case, okay, well they're talking about how many seconds did it take to get to this place, but you have to remember that 60, that a mile is 60 minutes and that a minute is 60 seconds. So in other words, I mean not a mile, an hour is 60 minutes and a minute is 60 seconds. So an hour is 3600 seconds. You have to like be able to remember that. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like, filter out the additional clues that are implied. Okay. All right. So I think we're about to get into a couple of examples here. Yeah. So here we go. So in this example, let's understand what the question is asking us. So this says the table gives the coordinates of 2 points on a line in the XY plane. The y-intercept of the line is k minus 5b, where k and b are constants. What is the value of b? Now, first of all, what is the question statement here? The question statement, hold on, give me a second. I need to get the pen ready. Sorry about that. The question statement is right here. What is the value of b? It seems very simplistic, but I can't overemphasize how important it is to understand what's going on here, what they're asking you. What is the value of b? We're finding b. This is what we want to find. This is what we want to find. All right, now let's kind of pick out a few more clues here. It says, so we know that we're dealing with algebra, like linear equation here. It's a line. We got coordinates of 2 points, which are in this table right here. The y-intercept of the line, and it's located here. All right, now, so when they talk about the y-intercept and they say it's a line, automatically y equals mx plus b. So the y-intercept that they're talking about is this right here, this b here. Now, if you remember with y-intercepts, whenever you are finding a y-intercept, all that means is that that's where a line crosses the y-axis. Or in other words, the y-intercept is where the x coordinate for that point is, where it crosses the y-axis, is equal to 0. Okay, and this is the y-intercept. K, so the x is k minus 5, and then the y is b. If it's a y-intercept, then this k minus 5 has to be equal to 0 because the x coordinate is equal to 0 where the line crosses the y-axis. So that means that k minus 5 equals 0. Therefore, k is equal to 5. Now, because we know that k is equal to 5, we can automatically plug that value in here. So this is 5, and then k plus 7, or 5 plus 7 is 12. Okay. So now we have the exact values for those 2 points. Now, they're asking us, what is the value of b? Now, if we want to know b, we have to know everything else. We have to know an x, we have to know a y, and we have to know a slope. Now, we can find the slope by using these 2 points here. Actually, you could do this. Um, you could do this a couple of different ways. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's find a slope. So you have to remember this stuff: y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, or in other words, so we'll do negative 15 minus 13 over 12 minus 5, which ends up being negative 28 over 7. So the slope is negative 4. Now, because we know m, and then we can get either of these sets of x, y's, we can plug them in and find what the value of b is. So y equals mx plus b. So let's use this xy coordinate. So y, or 15, equals m, which is negative 4, x, which is 12 in this case, plus b. We only have one unknown. So negative 15 equals negative 48. plus B, add 48 to both sides. Okay, and so B is equal to 33. Now we're done. Now, you notice we had to find K, we had to find the slope, but B is what we were looking for, so we couldn't lose sight of that. Okay, so it's very important. All right, and in this problem, AC is equal to CD, so this is equal to this. The measure of angle EBC is 45 degrees. The measure of angle ACD is 104. So right here, 104. What is the value of X? Now, I'll let you look at that for about 5 seconds. So we see X in that bottom small triangle there. In order for us to find X, we need to know what this angle is. We need to know what this angle is. We don't know either of those now, but we're going to have to find a few angles until we get there, right? So let's start with what we do know. In this top triangle right here, we know that this EBC is 45 degrees. Now, we don't know any other angles yet, but we know what this angle is right here, 104 degrees. And we know there's 104 plus this angle right here should be 180 because it's a straight line. They're supplementary. So that means that this is 76 degrees. If we know this is 76 degrees, the sum of the measures of angles inside of a triangle is 180. So inside of this triangle, 76 plus 45 plus whatever this is should be 180. Okay, so let's see. So 76 plus 45 is going to be, what's that, 121? 76, 45, right. Okay, and then 180 minus 121 is going to be 59. So that means this angle is 59. Now we know this is a vertical angle with this, so this is 59 as well. Now, if this side is equal to this side, then this angle and this angle right here are equal to each other because they're opposite sides of the same length. Therefore, 180 minus this 104 here, 180 minus 104 is 76, and that 76 degrees is divided equally between these two, which makes both of these 38. Now we have enough information to find X. X is going to be equal to 180 minus 59 minus 38. Okay, or in other words, 180 minus 21. Okay, and so that is X is equal to 159. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Hold on. No, no, no. Something wasn't done right. Is that correct? Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. So that's 59 degrees. That's 38 degrees. I think it is. Something doesn't look quite right. If X is 59, so 59 plus 38, 59 plus 38, 5, 6, 7, 8, 97. Oh yeah, that's not right. And then hold on a second. 180. No, no, no. 180 minus 97. Sorry, y'all. Um, so this is 0, 18, 3, 8. Okay, yeah, so X is 83 degrees. Sorry about that. So 180 minus 59 minus 38. 9 minus 8 is 1. 5 minus. Oh, never mind. I see. I see what I did because I shouldn't have. I wasn't subtracting those because both of these are negative. So that was my bad. Okay. All right. So anyway, now we have X. So it's important to not lose sight of whatever it is you're trying to solve. Another thing I want to help you to understand as well as we kind of move on to the end is this, that there are other tips and tricks that you want to know, like in case you do come across something that you don't actually remember, which will happen. But if you're able to critically think and make an educated guess, you have a very good chance of getting it right. The cool thing is that they don't penalize you for guessing on the SAT. So stuff like skipping a problem and coming back to it, stuff like process using the process of elimination. Um, you know, different things like that are things that I like to emphasize when it comes to taking the SAT because those actually can help you tremendously. It's not always about, again, how much knowledge you have. It's also a matter of, are you able to think critically, make an educated guess on what the answer actually is? All right, so let's go ahead and land this plane. So a great SAT score, again, is important because it helps you stand out among thousands of other college applicants who are applying for the same schools you're applying for. You want to stand out. A great SAT, you know, great GPA, but then also what kind of things you do outside of school. Is your life interesting and whatnot? But the SAT is like icing on the cake. A great SAT score also can help qualify you, and again, this ain't an exaggeration, but can help you to qualify for hundreds of thousands of dollars in academic scholarships. I don't know about you, but like I believe that money is very important when it comes to going to college. And whatever you can do to reduce however much you're paying for, that means that many less loans or anything like that. You can get your whole school paid for, and a great SAT could be a part of what allows you to do that. So don't shortchange your future and leave money on the table. Make sure you're preparing for the SAT. Don't go in there unprepared. Okay. And so hopefully if you got nothing else, you understand that you get that from what I'm saying here today. Okay. All right. So let's keep on going here. Now, if you're watching me on YouTube, you're already on my YouTube channel. And so I encourage you, first of all, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you'll do that. Um, but also I post problems regularly that are SAT level. Some of them I actually kind of created them directly from SAT problems. Others are kind of like math challenges, which I've been doing a lot of those lately. Math challenges that are like, if you can solve those, then you should be in pretty good shape when it comes to a lot of SAT math. So you want to subscribe to my channel. This ain't any cost involved. So it's a no-brainer. Go on there and solve all of those problems because I'm posting 2 and 3 problems a week. If you can solve those, you're in pretty good shape, and that's a good way to get into practice. I was talking about um, earlier in this webinar or in this workshop. Now, I've created a course which I've called SAT Math Mastery Quick Review, and so this is specifically designed for those who have um, taking the SAT and you maybe scored between 400 and 550, so you scored a little lower. Also for those who haven't taken it before, and to kind of give you like a refresher prior to taking the test. Okay, so what I review in that course is the most commonly used math skills that I've seen that show up on the SAT. A lot of the stuff, like even for example, the list I showed earlier, things like those, things that show up a lot. If you can go into SAT and then you're not surprised, then that's going to help you to be in good shape. This is also ideal for people who want to do like a quick review. That said, though, you also have, once you pay for the class, the online course is self-paced. So you go at your own pace, and then you also have access to it forever. So, you know, so you can use it for quick review. You can take the SAT and then just kind of take your time going through it and go through it again and again and again. You can do that. Okay. So this includes homework and homework solutions for extra practice. I include problems after you go through a lesson. You get homework problems that you can work on your own, and then you can go watch the video, see if you got the stuff right. Okay. So that's helping you very directly practice key skills. So as of now, because it's 2025, it's 149. But yes, it will go up to 209 January 1st, 2026. So if you're wanting some practice, you want to do this. Okay, so now actually I realized that I should have had a QR code in here, but let me just quickly share this link because I should have had it on here. But again, the main thing I'm trying to get to is that you don't want to go into the test blind. And my whole goal with this is to provide you with an opportunity to practice um, and not go into the test. Hold on one second. And not go into the test blind. Okay. Hold on a second. Why is that not? Okay, so I see I'm gonna have to come back in and share this another way. Give me 1 second, y'all. So I realize that the link isn't hyperlinked on the website for some reason. I'm gonna have to correct that. But here it is. All right, so let's post this here. So now it is in the chat. So even now, so some of you might have kids who are out, on break. This is a great time to actually do it. You don't have the pressure of getting a grade in school. So you can actually focus on this. Go ahead and start getting some of that practice apart from school. Okay. So there's the link there. And now, if you have any questions, then, oh, yeah, if you have any questions, I invite you to post them in the chat. I'll just sit up for a couple more moments just in case you have any questions about prepping for SAT math, the SAT online math online course, anything like that. Like I say, practice is really important. I'm not saying this just because I think it's a good idea. I'm saying this because it actually is what I did. It's what I did, whenever I was at high school or when I saw that I had need, even though I was a great student, I needed to practice because I went into the test and I realized that, okay, you kind of have to be strategic. You have to understand what this test is actually testing, what it's for. Okay. Because, like I said, when I took the SAT or the PSAT rather, like I almost felt insulted. I was like, this can't be right. But I just needed to review. I needed to be re-exposed to math that I had previously learned. Okay. So anyhow, any questions? Any questions? And if there are no questions, then it's definitely not a problem. Let me say this too. If if you don't have a college or I'm sorry, high school aged uh child, but you know someone, pass this information on. Pass the information on so they'll have some sort of way that they're actually actively investing into their future and preparing for the SAT. Okay. You don't go into it and just be just flailing and totally uninitiated. That's what you don't want to do. Okay. All right. So it doesn't look like we're gonna have any questions. But I thank you to those of you who joined in. Um, make sure you if you don't mind, like and thumbs up and all that kind of stuff, which I see a couple have done. And subscribe if you're not already subscribed to MathSwap Tutoring YouTube page. Stay tuned for all of our math challenges. I always think that they're pretty fun. It seems like a lot of people think that they're fun as well. Um, but yeah, um, if you have any questions, leave a comment, that type of deal. Go to mathswaptutoring.com. Otherwise, take care and have a great day.